Hello and welcome to ChamberLearn. Today I'm speaking with Talia Maksagak, Executive Director of the Kitikmeot Chamber of Commerce in Cambridge Bay, which is in the Nunavut territory of Canada. Yes, you heard that right. And I have a hunch this discussion is going to be one like no other. And Talia, I'm excited to share this time with you. So welcome to ChamberLearn.
Thank you, Ari, for having me on ChamberLearn. I'm excited.
Absolutely, as am I. We had the pleasure of having a bit of a warm-up conversation before recording this, and there's so much that I'm looking forward to you sharing with our audience. You bring with you some incredible life experience and some real nuances that I think are going to be eye-opening for members of the chamber community. And well, let's dive right into it, actually, if you don't mind, just by help us out. For those who aren't familiar with Nunavut or even Cambridge Bay in particular, help us paint a bit of the picture of where you are, what it looks like, what life is like, and we'll break it down a little bit, but maybe just help me out with perhaps offering some insight into the history of the region, the people, but let's start with the geography of where you are and sort of what your life is like there.
Yes, for sure. Thank you. So Cambridge Bay is located on Victoria Island, which is the 8th largest island in the world. And we have 5 communities within our Kitikmeot region of the Nunavut territory, which is only accessible through air or water.
Accessible through air and water, and even the regions between themselves? Yes. So the regions between themselves, in order for you to visit your neighbor to the left or to the right, so to speak, on a map, is traditionally accessible by air or water.
That's correct.
That is absolutely phenomenal. So tell me now if I remember correctly, when we were speaking, we're sitting at around plus, we'll put it this way, in plus temperatures, plus 15 Celsius, and you're right now sitting in the?
Negative Celsius, October 5th. About -2 to -8 this week.
Okay, and is that normal for this time of year? For you?
No, usually there's snow by now, and we have -20, -25. And the ocean is usually starting to freeze up by now, and the river, so I live near a river, and that's usually frozen by now, but it's still running.
Okay, so that's unusual, and listen, I'm going to just put it out there. If that's not normal, then I have to imagine that your neighbors, the people who are local in your community, are interested in what this is representative of. And I'm guessing you've got an opinion on that.
Yes. So with regards to climate change, it's very alarming, especially for the elders in the local communities. We were able to, once upon a time, predict the weather without the weather network or internet. But lately, it's been difficult for elders, and they're trying to go out in certain times when we have weather now, like the Windy app or the Government of Nunavut website weather, that tell us what the weather is going to be like. And we have to let our elders know that it's not able to travel this time because, the weather says it's going to be too windy, 80-kilometer winds, and it's alarming.
I can imagine that. And for anybody who can't quite relate, the colder temperatures offer what to the community that is lacking right now? What is it that you would normally be able to do during this time that you're not able to do right now?
Yeah, so usually this time, like I said, we have snow and the river's frozen by now. We'd be getting ice water, and we would be getting transportation through ice, whereas right now, because the water is still open, we have to wait until it freezes and until it's in safe conditions for us to travel.
And that is something that you would actually be looking forward to. So, okay, very good. Now thank you for a bit of the sort of visual. Give me some insight into who makes up your community, maybe population-wise, as well as literally who are your neighbors, and dispel some rumors maybe that might be preconceived notions of mine and of ours as an audience of who you're sharing this territory with.
Yes, so Cambridge Bay is approximately 2,000 people right now, and we have the Canadian High Arctic Research Station, which generates a lot of researchers from universities in the south to come up and conduct research. So that's one of our neighbors that come up, a lot of students that come up for research. We have a couple other communities. We have the Inuit people, we have a Filipino community, we have an Indian community, an African community. So it's very diverse for a community of 2,000 people. We have a lot of churchgoers, and it's very much involved with sports as well. So we have a lot of sports Nunavut, and we recently had one of our locals. His name is Ikiulak. I'll do a shout out to him. He made the Canada Arctic Games, and he's been doing incredible work. He was the first one in Nunavut to get a gold medal for our territory, so that's pretty big.
And is it fair to say that has provided some attention to the region?
Definitely. So I'll just make a side note that the suicide rates in the Nunavut territory are amongst the highest within Canada. So he has been an inspiration to a lot of the youth and to a lot of the people in general, because they're happy to see that the youth are doing things with their lives.
Absolutely. And thank you for giving that shout out. And I can't relate, and I can't imagine, and I hope I actually never have to. So I'm glad though that you have a role model there who is inspiring. So thank you for sharing that. Absolutely. Poses the question though for me, if I remember you saying a little bit earlier when we spoke, that there are traditional names and designations, and then there are the ones that sort of happen to come around that other people decided to offer up. Maybe give us some insight into some of the naming and of traditional and or common names that are out there today.
Yeah, so the Inuit people were traditionally nomadic people who traveled, and based on the activities that were happening for Cambridge Bay, the traditional name is Iqaluit, which means good fishing place or a place of many fish. And now, because of colonization and because Canada staked claim on the lands, was given Cambridge Bay. For the other communities, if you don't mind, I can list them quickly.
Sure, absolutely.
Johaven is the territory. It's a community traditionally known as Okshuktok. Olahuktok is another island on Victoria, but it's a part of the Northwest Territories. And I get those two mixed up, but it's Okshuktok and it's Johaven. And then we have Delavoyak, which is also known as Pelly Bay. And we have Kugakyuk, and we have Kugluktuk, and we have Cambridge Bay, which are the 5 communities that make up the Kitikmeot region in Nunavut.
Now, thank you for that. You shared that some of the naming convention, and you just said it refers to a place of good fishing. And one thing that you taught me that I thought was really fascinating is how names are assigned or shared, not just for places, but also for people.
Yeah, so we were traditionally in our Inuit culture given names based on keeping a spirit of somebody who's passed to continue on. So if, for example, I had a child and I had a grandmother or grandfather that I would like to continue on their namesake, we would give them the name traditionally. And that would help to generate the characteristics of that person that was lost to continue their life, to continue on. Does that make sense?
It does, but I think what I took away from it is some of the meanings of the name were also descriptive, aside from just remembering the person who came before, but also really as a descriptive of who they were in the world, their place in the world, if you will.
Yeah. So, for example, some of the traits that the individual would have, they would take on those and continue that within the world. So if they were good at baking, or if they were good at public speaking, or if they're leaders in the community, they're somebody that a lot of people want to continue with their characteristics in the world today.
Mm-hmm. It's fascinating how you were sharing some of the names that, that were given out and passed on from generation to generation. Was really interesting. So for anybody watching, I mean, I could probably go on with this forever, but definitely it is something that is worth learning about. And I thank you for sharing that with us. Help me out. Dispel some rumors about what people who are not familiar, who've never had an opportunity or never taken the opportunity to travel to the region, dispel some of those expectations. I think you started to talk about the fact that you've got members of the African community, you've got members of different cultural-based communities, so it's not all as we in Canada, perhaps in the US, have been trained to refer to people as indigenous, as sort of one large community labeled as indigenous. You've actually got numerous heritage and background and unique descriptives that are far beyond a singular word. And so maybe help me out with dispelling some of these, I don't want to say necessarily false understandings, but maybe misunderstood understandings.
Yes, for sure. So a perfect example of what you're talking about is if I travel south, somebody will ask me if I still live in an igloo, which is a house made out of snow and ice, which is a false accusation. We have lived in them in the past, and we practice that traditional activity springtime with the kids, and we teach them the traditional activities of how to build an igloo. But we don't live in them. We have homes. If you didn't see my KCC background, you'd see I'd have wallpaper in my home. However, some of the things that we do have are not the expectations that people usually have. We have an RBC bank. We have multiple restaurants with different cuisines like Chinese food and Filipino food, Vietnamese. There's a lot of culture up here that a lot of people wouldn't expect to see when you travel up here, but there's still a lot of cultural events and activities that take place that give you that sense of cultural connection to the Inuit culture.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because you did mention, alongside of who makes up your community, and the fact that you're attracting some attention, obviously through the sports, but also through the research center, the Arctic Research Station that's up there. You do actually have a fairly healthy tourism industry. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so the tourism here, we have one of the largest migrations that come up to our region, and we have a place called the Uvayuk Territorial Park where you can sit and they have binoculars for you to enjoy the multiple birds that come up.
That's phenomenal. And so, sorry, there is a little bit of a connection here, but for those of you who are interested, Talia, you're coming to us thanks to Starlink, if I'm not mistaken, that you've got access to up there, which, I don't know that Elon needs any more advertising, but I'm going to plug that we are having this conversation because of Starlink. And I think that's pretty cool. So tell me, why don't we use that actually as a bit of a natural segue, since I threw that in there. Tell me, forgive me, I'm going to make a statement. Traditionally and otherwise relatively isolated community or part of the world, how has technology played a role in terms of commerce and connectivity?
Yes. So technology these days helps with anything, like just aside from the commerce, just to give you an idea as well for our community, diagnosing people through virtual telehealth. I'm not sure if that's used in the South as much, but we have telehealth appointments here at our local health center for people to be diagnosed with either, autism, or to have follow-up appointments with doctors that aren't available here in the community. But with regards to the chamber, we have 3 different, if you don't mind me jumping into the different chambers within the territory. So there's 4 of them. There's the Kitikmeot Chamber of Commerce, which is what I'm working for currently. And there's the Kivalliq Chamber of Commerce, which is central Nunavut. It's kind of north of Manitoba and Saskatchewan, just for geographic purposes. And then we also have the Baffin Regional Chamber of Commerce, which conducts mostly of the communities on Baffin Island, but also there's a couple of them that are on separate little islands, not on Baffin Island, which is north of Quebec and Montreal, or sorry, Montreal is in Quebec. Forgive me for my geography, but we also have the last one, which is the Nunavut Chamber of Commerce.
Excellent. And thank you. That was a perfect segue. Actually, I as I mentioned right off the top, I wanted to sort of paint a picture of sort of setting the visuals for where you are. But absolutely, that's why we're here, is to get into the work that you're doing now. If I'm not mistaken, you recently joined the Kitikmeot Chamber of Commerce. I believe you said it was back in May. Why were you the right fit? What did you bring to the table that from previous experience, or why did you accept this challenge? Why was this the right fit for you, and why were you the right fit for the Kitikmeot Chamber of Commerce?
I love this question because at my previous position, and not only position, but with the organization I worked for, and this is so bad to say, but I am just going to be honest, because I straight up told them, I said, if I ever own my own business, I know exactly what not to do. And I know these people and their friends and their colleagues. And I had told them, and I was joking with them, like, it's so terrible here at this organization that, I know exactly what not to do. Like, I've gone through so much trial and error of how to get things done on my own, and how so many of these obstacles come in my way. And it was for a reason. And leaving that organization and coming to a brand new organization as the first Inuk woman executive director in the region for a Kitikmeot Chamber of Commerce, like, that's kind of monumental in my opinion. Like, it's super small, like it probably doesn't affect anybody, but to me, that's a huge accomplishment to be the first executive director that's female and that's Inuk, and that has that strive to say, you know what, I've been in an organization before. I know the ins and outs of what an organization entails. Like you mentioned, the strategic plan. I did a lot of that planning, and I did strategic workshops at a company that had 26 plus employees. And now I'm at 1 employee, and I can kind of gauge what I want out of this organization and see where it can go. And it starts somewhere, right? You got to start somewhere. And this is where I'm starting. With such a great board.
Let's actually spend a little bit of time on the board, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Who makes up your board, and what are some of the things that these board members bring to the table that you might find beneficial, or that a chamber and other chamber members may be finding beneficial as they guide the direction of your chamber?
Yeah, so the Kitikmeot Chamber is a non-for-profit with a voluntary board. So each board member is volunteering their time to participate in chamber business, and it's operated by paid staff. So myself as the executive director. So the board members make up of the president, and we have the secretary treasurer. It makes up of 12. So we have the potential for 12, and currently we have 8 volunteer board members. They are voted into a board member position through an annual general meeting that we have every year, and they are nominated and voted in. And if we don't have a full board, there's potential for more people to join in from the membership. And you do have to be a member of the KCC, the Kitikmeot Chamber of Commerce, in order to become a board member.
So you mentioned that locally you have about 2,000 residents in the Kitikmeot area?
Yes.
Okay. And give me an idea of, what does the business community look like? What's the primary, I don't want to call it an industry, but what would the primary source of commerce be, if there's one that stands out?
Definitely construction and plumbing and anything to do with housing and infrastructure. So one of the biggest ones right now is gravel. So there's actually a community that I mentioned before, Joe Haven. They have no gravel source, or a quarry, if you might. They actually are trying to hire people to do research on where the nearest quarry is, which is 9 kilometers from their community with no road access. So they have the materials to conduct stuff like that, but that gives you an idea of what type of businesses are within not only Cambridge Bay, but within the Kitikmeot region, because we, our road development, which is basically gravel based, because we don't have asphalt and stuff like that to an asphalt mill or concrete. So yeah.
Now, are ice roads, sorry for my ignorance, is an ice road a reality where you are?
Yes, definitely. So ice roads are common and they are different in each community. So as I was mentioning when I was on my tour, each community, has their own needs and requirements to run and operate as a community. And in my community of Cambridge Bay, we do have an ice road that takes you to a place called West Arm, and that's where people go sliding, and it's just nice. And it does involve road maintenance with snow removal. So a lot of heavy equipment operators are one of the biggest as well in the northern communities.
So tell me, have you grown up all your life in the area, by the way?
Yes.
Okay, so for as long as you can recall, has the Cambridge Bay area been one that would be referred to as self-sustaining, or does it depend on neighboring regions and even beyond the Nunavut territory, or how would you best describe it?
So Cambridge Bay is actually the hub of the Kitikmeot region. So this is where we have the big hospital and we have the RBC, like I'd mentioned earlier. So it's kind of like a little getaway for the other smaller communities like Johaven and Kugluktuk to come here, and they have access to all of these things that their communities don't have access to.
Now, you have been collaborating with some other organizations and entities in your role since about May that you mentioned. And part of your mission, I guess, from what you described, is to obviously develop, enhance, and encourage and nurture economic growth. But part of that you described is in relationship with these other organizations. The KCC, I believe you mentioned, serves all of the business members and members of your business community, but there are some also special projects that are being worked on the region that you're participating in. Tell us about that.
Yes, so we take the lead in certain projects, but there are other companies and institution of public governments. One of them being the Kitikmeot Inuit Association, and under that is the Kitikmeot Corporation. We also have the Nunavut Tungavik Incorporated, which is NTI. All of these acronyms, you kind of just KCC, KC, KIA, KIA. But we do have a bunch of other Inuit-owned organizations that were a part of legislation when Nunavut was created, and they are mandated to serve the Nunavut beneficiaries of the region and the territory.
And so how is it that your chamber is able to assist or collaborate or cooperate? What's the goal?
There's a lot of employment opportunities and small businesses within the region. And where KCC comes in with that is we help to develop a website or a platform that provides businesses or individuals an opportunity to put a portfolio up of what their company is, if they're hiring, if they're what type of services they offer. And the outcome of our partnership with them is to basically develop a website that has access to all of the businesses within the region, not just specifically Inuit-owned businesses, but restaurants or hairstyling services, salons, anything that somebody might have as a service to provide for somebody who has never been to the North before.
I have to ask you, in order to meet the soon-to-be determined objectives through the strategic planning process that you're going to identify these priorities, you're currently a team of one with a supportive board. What are you going to be able to accomplish as a team of one, and what are you going to need beyond the team of one in order to accomplish sort of medium and longer term goals? How is that going to change in order for you to actually action the items that you identify in your strategic plan?
So it does sound overwhelming being a team of one. And I say that because on paper, I'm the only paid employee, but I have a volunteer support of I have a huge support of volunteers and people. The previous executive director, his name is Jim, and he's always available. He's like, I'm always available if you need any help with anything. He's actually done the Kitikmeot trade show for 15 years now, so he knows the ins and outs of it, and it's his baby. So I'm trying to pull that away from him so that he can focus on his job. So we have a bookkeeping division in partnership with KCC. It's called the KCFI, which is the Kitikmeot Community Futures Incorporated. So they do payroll, so I don't have to worry about that. What I do is I work on my timesheet and I submit it to them, and they process that, and they process all of the memberships that come in. So we actually pay them for our bookkeeping services, which are a staff of 3 people. So I can say I'm kind of staff of 4 people with the board who is available to me, but it's, I pitched that I needed support for the upcoming trade show, which is an annual trade show in February, and it happens every February. We're known for our cultural events, and we've brought up Blue Rodeo, we've brought up Johnny Reed, so we've brought up like really cool people.
Blue Rodeo and Johnny Reed, they're both awesome. That's amazing.
So yeah, we brought up some pretty cool people, and we have cultural, like traditional dances. It's called the drum dance. So we're known for a lot of that stuff, and it's very well community organized. It's organized well by the community. So even if I'm only an employee of one, I did tell them like I will need support, and I don't want to have it as a system where it's I'm the executive director, I'm the boss of this person and this person. I kind of want to look at it as partners. So if I'm going to hire somebody, I want them to be like director of planning. So I'm the executive director when I look at more of the bigger decisions and sign-offs of like financials, where the director of planning will have more freedom, and I have confidence. Unfortunately, she accepted a job, and there was already somebody that I had in mind. But I know the type of individual that I'm looking for that, you know, will be good with logistics and stuff like that with the upcoming trade show. So with that being said, it's a committee that comes together with the different organizations and partnerships. So let's say KIA, the government. So we have a group of people that come together that plan for this event. So I'm kind of learning on what type of individuals I'm going to need before having staff full-time to provide that type of service.
So in your numerous conversations that you've had with members of the community as well as members of the business community, what is something that you're picking up as maybe a common or recurring theme or an aligned value that the business community is looking for that you would maybe spearhead or, you know, build upon through collaboration, maybe build a team, but take the charge and lead in terms of accomplishing that goal or that mission? What is an outcome that the business community would love for you to help facilitate?
Just collaboration, like you said. So a lot of businesses here, because we actually have businesses that can be competitive when it comes to construction and infrastructure. Like if you want to replace your sewage tanks, because all of the houses and buildings in our community have sewage tanks because we don't have a sewer system because of freeze up and permafrost. So we have fiberglass tanks that, you know, 2 or 3 companies are able to provide that service. So you have somebody who will give you a quote, and you have to get these type of quotes. And again, this is just an example. Instead of, you know, them trying to compete against each other, which there are a couple companies in the community that have been for years, it's getting everyone to work together. Some people, and I've heard, is they can't even be in the same room together because like business has drawn them so far apart. But when you bring them together for food, and when you bring them together for, hey, our community is in a crisis, or hey, our community has a loss, like there's reasons that bring these people together, and they set aside their businesses and they are there for each other. And that's what we need them to do when it comes to business, because they can't do that when it comes to business. So what my goal is to have these individuals come together and work together for the betterment of the community, which is what they all want anyways. But sometimes when it comes to business, it's like, we don't want you to have more money. We don't want you to make more money. We want, like, it just like gets very political, and you can't really be biased because like for me, especially like they're like, oh, well, you can't be biased towards your grandfather's company and this company. And people have this, I don't know what it is about people, like when they know who my grandfather is, they just assume I know everything about his business when I know nothing about it. But he provides plumbing and electrical. And even he tells me, he's like, oh, we do pressure washing on the sidings of homes. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. He's like, yeah, we do a bunch of stuff. So like people have this automatic assumption that I know everything about his company because he's my grandfather. I'm like, I didn't know what my mom did growing up. Like I knew she was studying school, but like she didn't tell me everything that she knows. Like she was there for me when I needed her for food and shelter. But yeah, so there's just a lot of different companies within Cambridge Bay, and I'm sure within the other communities that don't work together, that my goal is to help them to come together and work as a team and not in silos.
It sounds to me like you've actually identified a purpose, and I imagine that somehow that's going to work its way into being a priority in your strategic plan.
It's not only from observing, it's, you know, you have to come together and work together. We're in an isolated community. This is the reality. I just feel like I've done assertiveness training because I used to be a very timid person, very quiet. I'm a very shy person by nature, and I would prefer to just, chase spiders and be out on the land. So getting me to talk to people and get a group of people, let alone businesses, to come and work together is a big challenge, especially for me.
I think it's a big opportunity. It's a goal. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a goal that I hope to achieve, and also to be the person to create an alternate surface runway for our community, which is huge because that would help, and it would directly help everybody. Because
tell me about that.
Us not having jet services affects everybody directly and indirectly when it comes to medical travel patients who need to travel south. Because the lack of seats from jet services, we have less seats on planes. We have more planes, but less seats. Cargo needs to come up. People for prescriptions at the health center, for medications. Like, it's pretty serious sometimes, and the community is kind of overreacting about us not having a paved or alternate surface runway. And me being me, I'm kind of the devil's advocate in my own head as well. Think of it as a great opportunity for us to pause, because our growth was going. We went from about 1,700 people to 2,200 people in like the span of 5 years. And that's because of the Canadian Arctic Research Station. So we probably have about 2,200 to 2,500 people, give or take, just based on rotation. So people come up in bulk for work, and then they go south, and then they come back. So at the Canadian Arctic Research Station, there was about 200 people and construction workers that came up to help build that place, which they needed. We had to develop a camp for them. We had to get cooks for them. It was basically like, creating a little mine where they were just focusing on the big project of building this building. So yeah, one of the things I find that struggles for me is we were growing so fast, and there was a lot of other problems that came up, pregnancies, unwanted, alcoholism, parties, like just so many other different things that came up about from our growth. And we moved far away from the cultural practices. But having COVID and then having no paved runway or alternate surface runway has allowed us to kind of slow down and allowed us to, come back and rethink, resource management. We probably are going to need a new water lake because we have water tanks. We don't have a water system as well. So we have water truck drivers, sewage truck drivers, and those, that's a huge complaint in the community. So it's like, in my mind, I'm kind of at peace that we've had these barriers to overcome, because yes, it's going to take time, and yes, it's going to happen, but we need to be prepared for when it does happen, that we're going to get more than one airline, because we used to have 2 airlines, for competition prices, but we only have one airline that comes back and forth for passengers. So if we had a paved or alternate surface runway, we can get other type of airlines because they won't need a gravel kit to land here. So we'll have opportunities for people to fly other places, maybe even an international hub someday because of the location geographically. But yeah, that's one of my goals is alternate surface runway. It's a $30 million project right now, but it probably will increase. So my goal is to work on behalf of the board, because I work on behalf of their direction, to source out funding opportunities, engineers, people to come up and do assessments, because I think it's an either 5 kilometer long airstrip, which I think is 3 miles, but it's pretty small compared to like a regular airstrip. But we need assessments to come up, and we need people to come up and tell us the type of materials we'll need or how long the project will take. If there's any archaeological sites that have been there, we'll need an archaeological assessment. So it's really good that I went on the Nunavut Trade Show tour, because I met a lot of these people who are doing these projects, and they have these connections, and it's that networking part of the KCC that I'm able to kind of engage with.
That sounds like a massive undertaking, and listening to you, I can hear you've already been mapping it out and envisioning it and storyboarding it in your own mind. Of obviously, it's not a linear process at every stage. There will be different people to collaborate with and to gain knowledge from and to cross-reference with, but it sounds to me like you're already starting to see it complete and then work backwards so that you can get towards it. So that is absolutely phenomenal. I got to ask you this one question, and it's a bit of a lightning rod question, and I ask it with the utmost respect. In many communities, we talk about the pay disparity. We talk about representation that has been lacking from a cultural and an ethnic diversity perspective, as well as a gender perspective. In your community, what has been your initial response or finding to you being in the role of executive director of the business community? And the fact that you mentioned earlier, obviously it's a personal win. You're proud of yourself for being the first woman and the first Inuk woman in this role. I'm curious though, what do you see in terms of that acceptance, and also anything that you'll want to keep in mind as you grow in your role and your level of influence, as you bring your region and as a hub and as a really the epicenter of the growth that you're predicting? What do you foresee for yourself in that role?
I do have personal goals, just a side note, to go for post-secondary on business administration. Just, I'm working with a bunch of businesses. I should at least understand how business works. So that's a personal goal of mine that will also benefit my career. But for this role, I've noticed that you don't necessarily have to, like the previous executive director was great because he made all these connections and he had done this year after year. And the other previous executive director was there during COVID. So I'm noticing a trend with if you have the drive and if you have those goals and if you achieve them small, I'm doing small goals for myself right now. It's manageable. And I feel that if I put anything like the project runway is like gold to me. It's just up there on the pedestal and I'm striving to reach it. But I know it's going to take a long time and it's a process that I have to learn about. I do feel the weight of the region on my shoulders for certain situations, but I also want to put a face on that people can trust and people can, come to me with their concerns with what they're experiencing. And I've noticed a couple different rumors. So one of them is, oh, my sea lift was bumped off because this company sent up and they got priorities. And then I talked to the company and they're like, no, nobody's stuff got bumped off. And I'm like, so I kind of was already diving into a situation to help resolve an issue with our member. And it turns out that a deadline was maybe missed. There's no pointing fingers. And they're like, oh yeah, well, you can kind of see like where people come in, and I don't know if they were testing me or if they were challenging me, but I kind of laughed to myself because I was like, there's really no issue here. Like, you missed the deadline. Your stuff didn't get bumped off. You didn't even have stuff on to begin with. Like, there was so much confusion around it. And I kind of was, what do you call it, with like the cat and mouse. And I was just like chasing myself. So I was like, no, this is not a priority. This is something that a person had an issue with their personal business. And that's not what my goal is to do as the executive director. So I kind of just said, we'll make it next year, or I'm glad you got your shipment. Kind of just putting that assertiveness boundary there. Like, I'm not working only for you as a member. Like, I'm not your assistant. I'm here to help all of the businesses. So I'm kind of learning the type of, I guess you can call them rules. So the different rules that we kind of follow. With the chamber
protocols,
so because we have bylaws, but I've had experience working with people in policy, and they get pretty detailed with like arrival times and code of conduct and attire, like work clothing. So like it gets pretty detailed and it gets pretty intense, but right now it's very laid back, and I'm appreciative of the board that I have, and they all have really good experience with business and have been in business for 30 plus years. So they already know, and they kind of run the community, but I'm kind of here to help them because some of them are going to be retiring soon, and we don't want the way that the community is going. How, I guess you can kind of look at it as a strategic plan, like we're talking about, is, what's going well now and how can we continue that, and what's not working out and how can we improve that. So it's kind of just looking at the bigger picture and then going back to those and taking it step by step.
There's so much talk over the decades and generations around preserving heritage, preserving culture, avoiding seeing the sort of slow decline because of migration to major urban centers and hubs, and the economics of doing it, et cetera. So obviously there is, we're learning more and more, and I think it's long overdue that we are doing that, learning more and more about the rich heritage, the culture, art, but also the business opportunities that are found there. And we are hearing more about Inuit-owned and Inuit-based businesses. So tell me, what are some of the things that, what are some of the ways in which we can continue to sort of broadcast that and educate the rest of our peers nationally and internationally about the strength and about the, what the Inuit community is able to bring to the world and educate the world?
Definitely. So we have values and principles that we follow, which is called the Inuit Kauyimaya Tukangit.
Repeat that 3 times fast.
So it's the Inuit Kauyimaya Tukangit.
Got it.
Guiding principles. And it's basically translated to the Inuit knowledge guiding principles. And those are some things that, like other governments, come together to gather for common consensus. We have a bunch of those. There's 8 guiding principles that we follow that we'd like to promote to help people understand that, the first and foremost is to respect the land. And once you respect the land, you go into resource management and economic development and stuff like that, we use the land for resources. So once you have respect for the land, you know that your outcome is going to be great for not only yourself, but for the world.
There's a lot in there. There's a lot in there that's far beyond surface level. I think you actually, I remember the story you shared with me about the fish.
Yes. Would you like me to share that story?
Absolutely. I think that was a phenomenal story.
So I love my stepson. However, he's 12. You know, as you're growing up, we all make mistakes. And we had caught a fish one time, and we gutted the fish and we filleted the fish, and some people prefer fish heads and they like to eat them. However, we don't. So we discarded the fish, and he had grabbed a rock and he was hammering the fish's head and touching the eyeballs. And I go up to him and I asked him, is this something that you think is okay? Do you think it's right to do that to the fish? And he had to think to himself for a minute, and he said, no. I said, you're right. And I said, we need to be grateful to the fish for giving us its life, for us to survive. We do live off of fish a lot. So if the stores up here don't get any fresh produce, this is kind of a little off. But because we ship up all of our fresh produce and meats through the south, through the air, there's times when we go without fresh meats at the store. So we have to rely on the fresh fish that we have, that we freeze and vacuum seal pack. But I told him, I was like, so, you know, that's disrespectful to the land and animals. And for 3 days after that, there were 80-kilometer winds and we couldn't catch any more fish.
And that's not a coincidence. And that's what was so interesting, because especially given what the name of the region, said place of many fish and good fishing, for there to be no fish for 3 days because of the wind. I don't know. I'll leave it to the audience to decide for themselves whether or not that was a coincidence or not. But I mean, it is what I've learned from you in conversation is that these are values that are, held very close and dear, and passed on from generation to generation to respect the land and the fish. So no, and I thought it was relevant. Thank you for sharing the story.
Yeah, no problem.
So tell me, when we think of chambers of commerce traditionally, and we think of commerce in general, we typically think of larger, major urban or metropolitan centers. And in many cases, we also talk about the agribusiness and agri-community, which may be more rural in nature. However, we still think of commerce either on a localized scale or a national scale. But I'm really trying to help convey and share the message of commerce in your region. And tell me about what are some of the greatest opportunities for your region, and how is a chamber going to assist in that through education or through connectivity or through programming? What are some of the things that are on your horizon that you're aspiring towards?
Connection, for sure. Like, we are isolated communities within the north, and we strive for that connection, being so isolated, especially in the darker months where, yes, we experience 24-hour darkness and cold, so it can be very cumbersome to not have that connection. So when we build up membership, one of our goals is to build that connection. So if you're a member, you're connected, and you're not only connected to the benefits that come with becoming a member, but you're connected to a network of people who want to better the communities and work together. Because if you don't work together, it's just not going to work out. There's competition. There is competition in Cambridge Bay locally, but once, like during COVID, we experienced coming together and working together and following those Inuit Kaimai Tugangit principles and showing that we can work together again and we don't have to work in silos. So connection is key for us because we are so disconnected often. But thankfully to the virtual world and technology these days, we're more connected than we used to be.
What is it like? Is there a sort of a growth curve with bringing technology to your neighbors? Is there a welcome embrace of technology, or are there those who are sort of resistant to bringing in technology? Is it only me that would be imagining that some people think technology might compromise heritage and tradition? Or what is it like? What are some of these obstacles that you're dealing with?
Definitely both. So it wouldn't only be you, because there are, especially with elders, they prefer in-person conversations. So when I was on my Kitikmeot tour, we were meeting with one of the hamlet counselors, and I'm going to shout out to them, Kugagyuk, but their counselors are all elders. and it's an elder council, and they appreciated us coming and meeting with them in person because it's how things were done and how business was done in the Inuit culture before technology. So you'd come together before a hunt, or you'd come together before travel, and you would discuss amongst each other in person. There was no texting, no calling, no webcams. There was no technology. It didn't exist. We had to come together as people and decide on where to go forward to survive.
Now, tell me, when you say the word council, many may think of, for example, local government in the traditional form of town council or city council, municipal council. When you're referring to council, what are you referring to?
Municipal council, but because they are all elders, it's kind of both for their exception of the community. But it is a municipal council. It's their hamlet council. It was my first time in that community as well, and I was very honored that they were all, I was not honored, but I was proud that they were all elders, because elders have so much knowledge to hold and share with the communities, and they're mostly retired, so they have that time that they can dedicate to their community. Whereas you get some council members who have 2 businesses and a full-time job and children, and they just don't have that time. So it sometimes makes you wonder, why would you run for council if you have no time?
Mm-hmm. So we live in a country that is, the words that are often shared include the word diversity. They also include inclusion as a word. Excuse me for the inclusion, but that's just how it came out. And we've got provincial, and we've got ministries of, you name it, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Labor, Ministry of Education, and things like that. And you've got a community that is so deeply rooted in tradition and in sharing from generation to generation these principles that you talked about. Talk to me a little bit about how outside influence blends with local influence and traditional influence when it comes to education of your younger generation, and who is the community producing as people and preparedness when it comes to business and commerce?
Yeah, so when it comes to both traditional and modern, we definitely, like with the example of the weather, aren't able to predict things. So it comes in handy with technology that we have things such as the Windy app when people want to go boating, or if they want to travel and they want to make sure that they know what the weather is going to be like for the next foreseeable week. Whereas traditional knowledge, people will come and they will ask us questions about the migration of the birds. There's non-migratory birds, and those are things that you kind of have to observe and be embedded with the culture, and it has to be instilled in you to know, this is different. I've never seen this bird. This is an invasive species to the island. So there's definitely benefits to both traditional knowledge and modern day technology and knowledge. But we do try to combine both. And I think it's having that balance of the best of both worlds is what I like to call it. So you get, the benefit of seeing family that are not with you in person through, Zoom or webcam, but you also get to go out and disconnect 100% unreachable. You can go out and explore and have that peace that the land provides.
Sounds nice. Are there any industries or anything, any businesses that are providing export to other areas of the country, other areas of the continent, or the world in general?
So within the Kitikmeot region, yes. However, it's with a mine. So there's a gold mine here, not in Cambridge Bay, but south. So there's also a diamond mine. And there's several mines within the Nunavut territory, and there's an iron ore mine on the Baffin Island, and they export iron ore internationally as well. But when it comes to arts and culture, because you can't really export furs or ivory, and this is kind of a funny story, but a lot of the local stores will sell bone earrings or necklaces and jewelry, which is ivory from a narwhal tusk. And a lot of people from the south, when they come up to buy, and I tell them that it's ivory, or the note will say ivory and narwhal if it doesn't say narwhal and it just says ivory, they're like, is this elephant? Like, no, it's not elephant. It's ivory from a narwhal tusk. And no, so there's a lot of different types of things that can be exported.
That might be the same person who's asking you if you live in an igloo, though. I think.
Pretty much. Yeah. But there's definitely the arts and culture with, I'd show you if I had one, but there's a calendar and there's an artist, not in my region, but she produces very nice drawings that have been turned into calendars and postcards and stuff like that. So there's definitely opportunities for businesses to export internationally and nationally. But for the most part, local businesses serve local people, and that's kind of how it works.
So we've talked about local businesses serving local people. We've talked about how traditions continue both as guiding principles, but also in the form of government, that you've got the elders who are serving the people, which is something that, gave you peace and pleasure to see that happening in the neighboring community as well. What about has technology changed the way you're doing business? Has it opened up opportunity? Are people embracing technology to, you talked about connectivity, right? Has technology expanded the business opportunity in any way? I know I'm kind of fishing there, excuse the pun.
No.
I'm curious of aside from what you've been doing for generations, because of that opportunity of technology where you didn't have that connectivity before, what has that opened up? I have to assume it's opened up something. What has that opened up for you?
Yeah, so when it comes to technology, like I said, there are elders who refuse to even have a cell phone, and they prefer that one-on-one connection, which is genuine, and you get to see them and their reactions. However, it's actually created an opportunity for locals, especially the local artists, like carvings or sewings, when they don't have good English or writing skills. AI, as you've heard, can turn one sentence into a biography or like a little bio. So if you put down, I am Inuk, I sell carvings made out of soapstone for this many years. Like, if you're able to talk into the technology, it can generate and populate a written bio for you, so that you don't have to spend that time if you don't have the good writing skills or the education to do that in English.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I can see that. I mean, I'm wondering if we're able to learn about the Inuit community and the Inuk people. Did I get that right?
Yes.
The Inuk person. You taught me something. Tell everybody else, because I can't be the one who didn't know it.
So with the Inuit language and the Inuktitut language, which are two different languages, we have, it's pretty simple because we do singular, plural, and more than two. So for me, I'm an Inuk. And for me and you, if we're in the same room, we're Inuit, which is more than one Inuk. You don't pluralize the Inuk to make it Inuks. You have Inuit. So we have Inuit, which translates to people, and Inuk, which translates to person.
Thank you for that. And I have to admit, I mean, this is an opportunity. We're doing it right here. I mean, we're using technology for, in fairness, I'm going to be selfish, for me to have a conversation that I might otherwise never have had the opportunity to have. And it's an opportunity for us to learn and to share knowledge, and really for me to grow. I'm really just so curious of what comes next for your community, and equally for the rest of us who, maybe through no ill will whatsoever, have lived a life taking everything for granted. Things that they're not in front of our face and they're not in our immediate vicinity. We assume it doesn't exist. I think is a fair reality for many people. So I'm curious of what you see the future holding for us collectively.
Yes, so I grew up with a pretty good understanding of technology. But other people who don't have that opportunity, it opens up training opportunities, especially for locals to gain access to courses that are not available within our local communities. We have a big issue with finance, finding people who can work in the finance department. And we have a big issue with hiring people to come up to work and teach these finance courses. So technology can help people get their post-secondary education from the comfort of their own home or from the local school that we have here, which is the Nunavut Arctic College. So they can attend the Arctic College and in partnership with a Southern university to get their degree or their master's when they don't have to travel with their whole family and migrate south. They can do all of that with the comfort of their own communities.
And what role can the Chamber play in that?
I think connecting them, like I was saying earlier, our goal is to connect people, and it's connecting them with the right people to provide the funding. If you're a non-Inuit person who wants to have your own business, but you need the education, you can come to the Chamber and we can get you to the right people who will provide you with funding, such as CANOR, which, correct me if I'm wrong, is the Canadian Association of Economic Northern Developers Agency. It's like a really long acronym, but they provide funding opportunities not only to Inuit, which there are people in the community who provide only to Inuit beneficiaries. So I think just connecting them with the right people that they need to talk to when it comes to these opportunities.
So you've been in this role for not even 6 months, or maybe just barely 6 months. Obviously, you've learned a lot. There's a bit of a crash course there. You are continuing to grow your knowledge bank for yourself. You've got some projects for yourself coming up in the very near future. Tell us about what some of the personal missions you're on to meet new people and build connections yourself.
Yeah, so I was approached from one of my friends locally that there's an opportunity to travel to Rome, Italy for an indigenous youth forum. And this forum is in particular on agriculture and food security. So I put my name in for the application, and out of 500 plus applicants with the indigenous community in Canada, got selected to go. The only one from my community and my region traveling, and I believe the only one from Nunavut, but I can't be too sure on that. But I'll be traveling to Rome, and my goal is to provide the knowledge that the Inuit Kaimai practices that we have that are sustainable. You know, we go out and we fish and we use everything on the fish. Aside from us, we don't use the fish heads, but a lot of people do. They save them for their dogs, or they save them for the elders who enjoy fishing. Enjoy the fish heads. But yeah, I'm excited for that. It's coming up in the next 2 weeks. I need to go to Edmonton first to get my passport. We don't have a place in Cambridge Bay that does passport photos or passport printing. So if I didn't travel to Edmonton, it would be about 2 to 3 months for me to wait for my actual passport through mail, air mail.
This sounds fascinating. Sounds exciting. I look forward to the opportunity to catch up with you. I don't know, give you a few more months and see the trajectory that you're on. I know you are a person on a mission. You've got your mandate to go out and build those relationships, to build those connections. And I would love to catch up with you in a couple of months from now to bring you back on and see how that trajectory is going. And I really do appreciate you taking the time. Thanks to Elon for making this also possible. But for us, maybe he'll pay us for this. I don't know, some unsolicited advertising for him. But no, I'm just thankful that we had this opportunity to meet, for me to learn about who you are and what you're doing, and I'd love to see how some of those connections actually pan out for you, and really what comes of them, because I can see only good things coming from these connections. So Talia, I'm going to say it one more time, Maksagak. Did I get it right?
Got it right.
Talia Maksagak, Executive Director of the Kitikmeot Chamber of Commerce in Nunavut, Cambridge Bay, Nunavut Territory, Canada. Just awesome meeting you, and you're a ray of sunshine, and thank you very much for giving us some of your time.
Thank you so much, and I look forward to meeting with you in the next couple of months as well.
ChamberLearn is a sieve of creative production, hosted by Arif Khan, produced by Breck Lover, edited by Andrew Gallimore, music courtesy bensounds.com, directed by Arif Khan, executive producer Arif Khan and Mallory Steele.